So June 13th will be the 12th anniversary of my first significant solosexual date. As a reminder, I'm still offering an ounce of silver reward for anybody who goes on a solosexual date before June 13th. We're going to put a video together and raise some awareness of solosexual romance. I'll probably send the video to Let's Go Brandon. There are some policy issues that I want to suggest. Most significantly, I want the concept of marriage to be deinstitutionalized. I think how you marry is up to the individual, right? So, for example, we shouldn't have any concept of, we just filed our taxes, of marriage in our taxes. We shouldn't have any concept of marriage in any law, right? Strike out the idea of marriage in every law. That would be what I would shoot for. That's a utopia that I would shoot for. But any step toward that is a good thing, right? So we got 1 week. But really, I've been solosexual most of my life. I just didn't realize it until I was 23 years old. So when I was 13 years old, one day my family and I had argued. I think over something really trivial. It was nothing significant, right? I didn't have any drug problems. I wasn't trying anything unusual. I wasn't missing school or anything. They just had some differences in lifestyle. Maybe we were arguing about what we were going to eat for lunch or something insignificant. But I got very upset and I took off and I started walking through our neighborhood. We lived in a suburb of Pittsburgh, and my mom got very upset. And after half an hour, she came looking for, she thought I had calmed down enough. She came looking for me, and she was very upset at that for whatever reason. I really felt at home when I was by myself, though, and that was that. I was in 8th grade at the time. I had differences in hobbies than a lot of my peers. I had taught myself a good amount of chemistry, reading some old textbooks of my dad. He's a chemical engineer. And one time I had taken a bottle of hydrogen peroxide and concentrated it by heating it. So I had about 50% hydrogen peroxide instead of 3%. And I was fascinated with that stuff. One of the first things I did was, because I used to use 3% hydrogen peroxide to clean out my earwax, I still love doing that. The first thing I did was to put a drop of that 50% in my ear, and I couldn't hear out of the ear for 5 minutes or so. And so I was scared to death. But once my hearing came back, I became fascinated with that stuff. I went to the school bus stop one morning and I was trying to tell my classmates about what I had done over the weekend with the hydrogen peroxide, but nobody wanted to listen to me. All they wanted to talk about was who they had kissed or something to that effect, right? Relationship material. The people I was waiting in the bus stop with were around my age, and I got fed up because I didn't feel like I was included just because I didn't have a partner. Yeah, I still feel that way. 20 years later, and not much has changed, I would say. So I hid behind a tree to wait for them to finish up, to kind of show my disapproval as well. And when I came back, the school bus had left. I had missed the bus. I went into the house to get my mom to tell her what happened. At first, she didn't think much about me missing the school bus. She thought I had gotten distracted or something. But in the car, I was telling her about nobody wanted to listen to my chemistry experiment. And my mom got very irate. She was like, "Enough of the chemistry! Get a life!" And it really bothered me because that was my life and she didn't acknowledge it. I didn't realize why I was upset at that remark at the time. Now looking back at it, I have a very different interpretation of it. And my parents also disapproved of me doing the chemistry experiments. First of all, they thought they were worried about my own personal safety, but second of all, they thought I didn't have a life. I still run into that problem, by the way. I'll get to that in a second. Now, not long after the arguments about the chemistry experiments and me taking a walk. Not long after that, 9/11 happened. And I got deathly afraid of flying. And I didn't think that would be a problem. I thought I would never fly again. And I even told my parents. Now, my mom was very upset at my remark that I wouldn't fly again because at the time I had 3 grandparents in Taiwan. They were all in their 70s at the time. And my mom said, well, don't you think you need to fly home to Taiwan at least 3 more times? And I said, why 3? And she said, don't you feel it's your obligation to attend their funerals? See, I didn't want to think about the idea that my grandparents would pass away someday either. And so I completely tuned that out. And, you know, I love staying on top of science. And I told my mom, you know, by the time we have to go there, flights will be incredibly fast anyway. It might take only 30 minutes in a rocket to get to Taiwan, and I can maybe put up with that. But in the meantime, I don't need to fly. All the things that I love are back home here in the United States anyway. You know, the other problem with flying is that oftentimes I can't find my favorite foods in Taiwan and wherever we're going. And that's all right. That's all right. By the time we get to their funerals, there'll be a better way to travel. And my parents kind of acknowledged that, but unfortunately, this is where my luck sometimes get really unfortunate. A year and a half later, one of the flying machines I was thinking of also crashed, and Colombia, of course. And now I really didn't want to fly, and so I went another 5 years without flying. I still can't believe it looking back. I really missed out on a lot of things. I do private tutoring these days, and I see kids in that age range where I didn't fly, go on vacation to Hawaii and do all the fun things in life. And I have one student who's competing in math counts, and he may be traveling to a national competition at some point, and that's definitely something I would not have entertained back then. So, I really missed out. But at the time I didn't miss out, though, because all of my fantasies were with myself. I didn't know it at the time, though. At the time I really didn't. When I was, I moved out of my family's home when I was 21 years old to go pursue my PhD. And you gotta understand, in the environment I was in, most people had some kind of a partner, right? A lot of times I would be in a class, and it really took me by surprise. I think it was Thanksgiving or Christmas, our professor had asked us if anybody had any reason that they needed this final exam timing to be changed. They had family matters, and it really took me by surprise when some of my classmates mentioned their kids had some kind of event, right? Or maybe a spouse. I think I heard a few other issues where their spouse had business travel or something like that. And it felt really lonely to be in a classroom full of that. I didn't know how to stick up for myself at the time. And so I quickly, in the space of a few months, I grew very rapidly. I lost my virginity that first semester at RIT. And I really didn't like having a partner in life. But when she came to the campus, it felt like all was normal again. It felt like I was in the same playing field as everybody else. I was naive at the time and didn't know how to stick up for myself. And eventually I met a girl who really took advantage of me. She was using me financially. I had lost most of my life savings, and I wasn't eating right because I was spending all my money on her. I lived in Rochester, New York, where you could find a lot of roadkill. I gathered a lot of just wild plants that I could find. I remember we had a lot of apples that just grew out of nowhere, and a lot of mushrooms, and I wasn't eating right. And I had a friend who worked at a grocery store, and he would give me all the expired foods that they would have thrown out anyway. And I was eating a lot of that stuff, and I got deathly ill. My advisor was very upset. I was on the verge of being dropped out of school. My family was very upset at me. They didn't want me back in their home anymore. I distinctly remember one conversation with my mom, and she was like, if you drop out of school, you're not coming back home to live with us. I was scared out of my mind because I didn't want to break up with the girl either, because I would go to school and not be accepted for who I was. That's the logic I was using at the time, believe it or not. And so eventually, I have some very good, well, I think my family or either some of my friends at the campus, some true friends of mine, obviously at the time I didn't think they were good friends, sabotaged the relationship. I don't know what they said to the girl. And finally, I broke up with her. I think it was late May, early June of 2010 that I broke up with her. And I almost wanted to kill myself. Actually, I attempted to kill myself with an overdose of, well, baking chocolate, if you could believe it. Anyway, obviously I failed, and I went very woozy. This was late May of 2010 when I attempted to kill myself. Now, on June 13th of 2010, there was going to be a coin show in Henrietta, New York. And I remember thinking, oh my god, I got to meet somebody to go to that coin show. And I signed up for several dating websites. I started randomly harassing people on Facebook just to see if anybody would be interested in me. Nothing stuck. I woke up on June 13th and I almost didn't want to go to the coin show. It was a really sunny day. If you don't believe me, why don't you look up the weather for Rochester, New York on June 13, 2010, if you can find it somewhere. I remember looking one time just to confirm what I remember. Real sunny day. I got on my bicycle because my car was in such disrepair. At the time I was seeing the girl, I didn't have money to fix the car. My car was just sitting in the parking lot at RIT. Rode my bicycle to the coin show, thinking maybe I'll meet somebody there. And had the best time of my life. When I got there, as soon as I got there, I forgot about the idea of needing to meet somebody, and I had a really good time. And at the time, I had a classmate who was homosexual, and so I told him I was solosexual. Didn't even know that was a word at the time. And so began my campaign of getting accepted for who I am as a solosexual. Now, a year after that, it was June 11th of 2011, I was at a conference on artificial intelligence in Boston, and just like any other solosexual date, I took a number of walks throughout Boston. But the second day of the conference, I noticed a girl that I liked at the conference. Now, she looked like another girl that I knew when I was in college, and I mistook her for her. And so I went to look at we had this sign-in sheet with what they were talking about. I wanted to see what she was talking about, but as I got to the counter, I saw her, and I didn't want her to see that I noticed her. And I was looking for her name on that sign. I couldn't find it. And so I was like, and then I looked more carefully. I thought I was mistaken. It wasn't the girl I knew in college. It wasn't. But they looked very alike. And so I devised a little plan for how I was going to talk to her. I was going to sit in the very back of the conference room and wait for her to come in the front. And then I was going to exit through the back door and then go around the campus and go into the front door and sit down next to her. That way it wouldn't look like I was looking for her. So I sat at the very back of the conference room, and to my surprise, she comes in and she sits down next to me. And I was so ecstatic about that. I went to the bathroom and I jumped up and down screaming, and came back, and that was that. But after I got to know her, I still liked my solosexual life infinitely more than that. But it was nice. It gave me a boost in confidence. the next year I started my first job, and I ran into a lot of troubles. I could never have a work-life balance because everybody thought that that you needed a partner to do anything, right? Even to this day, I cannot very easily ask for a day off. Right now, I'm thinking about going to my favorite theme park, but I'd rather go on a weekday because the weekends can be really busy, and I have not brought myself to ask for the day off because my boss will torment me about going to stuff alone. He thinks I should bring a girl there. Why would I want to do that? So, for example, one of my favorite rides at the Wild Waves is the Panic Drop. I could ride that 100 times in a row. There's no girl in the world who's going to put up with that, right? Another thing I love to do is when I drive, I love to watch the gas economy meter and see how high I can get it to go. And people on the road are very angry that I do this already. I can't imagine then having somebody in the car who's also very angry at that. For me, it's a video game almost when I play the how high can I get the gas economy to go. Just the other day, I got very upset at I was in Redmond when this pedestrian wanted me to go in front of him, but I was still trying to economize, so I was going really slowly. And then he lost his patience and he started crossing, and I swerved around him, and I opened the window and I screamed, "My gas mileage! My gas mileage!" And he gave me a really funny face. Thank God I did it this year, right? Had I done this back in 2020 when gas was like $1 a gallon, he probably would have laughed at me, right? I love this game, no matter what the gas price is. I'd probably still be doing it if gas prices went negative, right? Even if somebody was paying me for gas, I just love the game so much. But unfortunately, I can't find anybody who has... Well, nobody's going to have the exact same interest set as me, right? And so I can't imagine asking my boss for a day off so I can play the gas economy game and to go to the computer Olympiad or the theme park. I mean, because he's just gonna laugh at my interests all over again. Now, in 2013, I competed in my first computer Olympiad. Wow, all these stories bring tears to my eyes. Sorry about that. I went to my first computer Olympiad. And during my trip to Yokohama, I went to Fujuki theme park and rode on the steepest roller coaster in the world, 111 degrees, if I remember correctly. Had a great time as well. Wow, all these stories bring tears to my eyes. I was dating a girl many years my junior, and this was early 2016 we're talking about, and I like to use I used to love to meet girls many years my junior because I thought that was proof that my body was still young. I know I love confirmation like that, just like the other story I mentioned about how having a girl sit down next to me at a conference. It gives me confirmation that I'm doing the right thing. Unfortunately, we had a huge falling out one day. I had been late getting to their home many times because I would get hung up writing computer games. I would get hung up with driving really slowly to play the gas mileage game. So I got to their home really late one evening. She lives with her parents. And we argued. She thought I was cheating on her. And I told her I was, but with a computer game. And that upset her even more, that I would value a computer game more than her. And her parents heard it, and I think her parents were kind of on my side as well. They accused her of being paranoid about every little thing. She probably doesn't behave like this just with me, right? She probably gets paranoid about her parents, their intentions as well, right? And so I stormed out of her home. And I was so lost in thought that before I knew it, I had driven 120 miles to Vantage, Washington, and it was late night, and I got to see the Milky Way and Jupiter and Saturn, and I really liked it. It's Wild Horses Monument. I've shot a number of videos there, I think. And in my mind, it's a space station here on Earth. I go there to view all sorts of celestial events. And it really does feel like a space station. Sometimes before I go there, I even jokingly say T-minus 3 hours until I go to Vantage Space Station. Haven't been going as much lately because the price of rocket fuel has been a little bit out of my budget at the moment. But I do hope to see another lunar eclipse there in November. We got a few other major conjunctions coming up as well. And so began one of the best solosexual relationships I ever had. Between breaking up with her and meeting another girl that I'm going to talk about extensively, there was a good 2.5 years where I was very romantically involved with myself. I call that period Solosexual Interstellar because of how it began. And then I met a girl through a friend of mine at a board game club that I used to go to, and she and I hit it big. And I was planning to propose to her on December 21st, 2020, because Jupiter and Saturn would come into conjunction. And I was saddened out of my mind because I didn't want to give up my life as a solosexual. And I became a huge mess. I developed major binge eating problems during that time. I wasn't sleeping right. And but I really liked her, and I really liked my relationship with myself. I got this big I was significantly confused at the time, if you will. Now, back in 2010, when I had left the girl who was taking advantage of me, and I made an agreement with God. I would leave her, but I wanted God in the future, if he saw me getting involved with the wrong person, to do something to cause the relationship to not work, right? Even if I have to look stupid, right? For example, cause me to look stupid on our first date, cause me to get ill and not be able to see her. Do something. And, well, I got my wish, although that's not the best way for this to have happened. But obviously, my relationship with the girl I was thinking of proposing with, I mean, there wasn't anything abusive about it. We just weren't right for each other. The timing wasn't right, especially. Let's put it that way. And I really love my solosexual relationship, and I think she does too. In March of 2020, God made us stay 6 feet apart, and we both loved it. I started writing an AI for the game of backgammon, and so began my second significant solosexual relationship. I call it solosexual 6 feet apart, obviously. I took up bowling during this one, and my latest high score in bowling was a 262, I think. And I moved out to the Rocky Mountains. I took a lot of long-distance walks there. And then I met a girl at a restaurant that I frequented. And unfortunately, things were moving way too fast with her. We had a falling out. It probably wasn't the only reason we had a falling out, but it was an excuse for us to get out. We had a falling out over our ideas of whether or not we want to take this pharmaceutical drug that was being pushed last year. And so I hardly missed a heartbeat of that. I went right back to my solosexual romance. This was April of 2021 we're talking about. And so began my current solosexual romantic story. I call it Solosexual Reemerge, because I'm re-emerging into this brave new world. And so here we are, 14 months into my third significant solosexual marriage. And As you guys saw, I've been viewing lunar eclipses and other stargazing events, writing a number of computer games, and I hope to go to Wild Waves theme park sometime in the next couple of weeks. Whether or not my boss is gonna laugh at me is a whole nother story. Right? I really hope it doesn't happen this time. I really do. It puts a whole haze over the office environment that maybe I'm not welcome there. It really does. And as you can see, all the tears in my eyes about recounting all these stories, especially the time I almost killed myself and how I quickly discovered my solosexuality, and especially how my prayers were answered when God kept me 6 feet apart from my girlfriend and made us both much more happier. I mean, we still check up with each other from time to time, but we like it that way now. Well, happy 12th anniversary to me, and make sure to record those videos and send them to me. We'll make a video and send it to Let's Go Brandon. Alright, so earlier today I just recorded a video about my lifetime experience of being solosexual. I just noticed there's a little bit of an addendum to it. So this is one of my favorite department stores. They have a cafeteria in there that I used to hang out a lot in, and I met a lot of important figures in my life in. And unfortunately, something happened that brought a lot of sadness to me. There's a door that goes in. Oh, everybody's gonna laugh at me when they hear it, but there's a door that goes into the side of the building, but during the pandemic they converted it to an emergency exit. We're sorry for any, maybe we converted this entrance into an emergency exit. And that saddens me, because I spent a lot of time in there going through this door, and there's a little bit of a room in here if I needed to make a phone call or do something, right? I spent a lot of time in there. And not that I'm gonna lose anything from not being able to use that door. I mean, it's not like there's an important reason for me to use it. I don't have a disability or anything, but it's just sadness. It's like breaking up with somebody and having to adjust to the breakup. Now, what makes this even more sad is that when my coworker, when he breaks up with his girlfriend, gets a divorce, or has a major fight, falling out with a family member, everybody will mourn with him, right? I will mourn with him. But when my door breaks up with me, nobody even seems to hear it. And that's one of the issues I want to bring up in terms of single lives matter. People have things that are near and dear to them, even if they seem stupid to you, right?